Identify and book the world's best speakers for your next event. MENA Speakers is the leading speakers and MC bureau in the Middle East. We bring global talent to the region and have established the region as a key global hub for speakers. Inspire and motivate your audience. Find exactly what you are looking for by working closely with us to assist you in understanding the cost-benefit analysis tied to selecting a speaker for any event. Ensure that your audience is educated, engaged, and empowered. Connect with us for a quick response and tailored advice. Book your speakers now.
If it's Friday, it's the CEO series. Good morning, good afternoon, depending upon what part of the world you're in. Our guest today is Karin Gabriel. She is an innovation expert, and our topic is the future of innovation in education, organization, and the creative workforce. To give you creative workplace, to give you some background, Karin has over 10 years experience, international experience in developing and delivering programs, building communities focused on human-centric innovation and emerging tech. These innovation programs in the form of accelerators, hackathons, incubators, pitching competitions, educational workforce workshops aimed at creating a bridge between entrepreneurs, government, and private sector, respectively. While originally Austrian, she has lived and worked for 8+ years in Bangalore, India, as well as Dubai, where we met. And as the lead of Dubai Future Accelerators, she had the pleasure of working with 150+ tech startups and scale-ups from around to create collaborative projects and with the local governments and companies. In September 2020, she joined Ars Electronica in Austria to build a new department dedicated to professional training programs focused on emerging technologies and foresight for private and public sector organizations as well as academia. Welcome. How are you?
Thank you, Ron, for having me. It's an honor to be on your show, and I'm excited about our conversation.
Yeah, thank you for being a part of it. You have a unique position because you kind of sit at the forefront of innovative technologies, companies pitching new ideas and all those kinds of things as you headed up the Dubai Accelerator program. What do you look for that's unique, say in a business pitch? Because you may, I'm sure over a period of time, you may interview or people pitch you on so many ideas. What is the kind of key thing that you look for?
Well, to provide a bit of context, Dubai Future Accelerators is a program run by Dubai Future Foundation, a very innovative and unique organization in Dubai. And I had the pleasure of being part of the team that was building up this program. And then I had the pleasure of leading the programming team for a couple of years until mid of last year when I returned to Austria. And it's called Dubai Future Accelerators, but it's not a traditional startup accelerator. It focuses on accelerating, speeding up innovation in the public sector, but more than that, actually in the city of Dubai and the country, the United Arab Emirates overall. So our request came from the government entities we worked with, who were extremely brave and very dedicated to this program. Later on as well, private sector organizations like Procter & Gamble and family-based businesses. And each of these organizations was looking at what are specific projects around emerging tech, what is an emerging tech solution that we are interested in exploring, in testing, and potentially even purchasing. So they came up with their demand, and we refer to this as challenge.
Okay.
And the very exciting part, Ron, was that we published these challenges and companies from all around the world had a chance to apply. So on average, for each cohort, we had between 600 to 700 applications that we reviewed internally as well as with partners, and we're looking at shortlisting the most suitable startups. And it always changed from the requests from the government organizations and private sector organizations, because they always, and this is the most exciting part, came up with a new challenge for each cohort. So we had I personally had an exposure to a very diverse set of startups and scale-ups, which I really appreciated.
Mm. So around technology, future focused kind of approach, what were some common themes, as it related to that? Even looking at what your current state and future state is to what you're doing now. How do you differentiate between those?
So some common themes among the challenges were that there were certain technologies or that sparked the interest of various organizations we worked with. So may it be artificial intelligence and blockchain. But it was very interesting. It was always human-centered, which means there was always a focus on, well, if we implement these solutions or if we solve this problem, this challenge, what would be the better outcome for our customers and employees? So they always looked into what do our customers and employees need, and then worked backwards. Okay, what kind of solutions can we look for? Which was very interesting. Yeah.
Okay. So you look at end state, a future state, and you work backwards from there.
In a way, yes. So we were looking at kind of like projecting in the future. So how could we solve this? And then if it were solved, what would be the impact on customers, on employees, on stakeholders that were operating in that field?
Okay. So if I'm an investor, or you're looking from an investor's perspective, would that be the key point that they would look for, is what are you solving? Or what is the...
Yeah, I mean, investors usually have a bit of a different mandate. They're more looking at the monetary return on investment, because here government entities were open and private sector entities were open to test these solutions, to further develop it, to then adapt, localize it, and apply it. And the idea behind this program, which again, it was an honor to work on, was to use the city as a test bed. And the reason why this is so important, Ron, is because when you think of let's give an example. Assuming you're the CEO of a startup and you have just developed a new medical device. Well, you can't just release it to the market, right? You need to work with a health authority that checks it, that proves it's doctors that verify and test it. So if you are a small startup, let's say based out of Berlin, Germany, or any other city around the world, wouldn't it be fantastic to have a spot where you can say, I can actually go to a government organization, which, me being a very small startup and them being like this big organization, we can speak on eye level and we can really talk about testing and implementing it if the tests go well. And this is what we saw, that quite a few startups appreciated this opportunity to have a test field, because certain solutions you can't just test with your friends, right? I mean, you would need very brave friends.
Yeah, you just come out, everything is supposed to change as a result of that. Yeah, so cool. Yeah. So tell us where you are and what you're going to be experiencing over the next week, I think, or so.
Yes, so I moved back to Austria, but right now I'm actually in Lisbon in Portugal. I spent the last few days here on vacation, which was really beautiful because it had 20 degrees, which is very warm for Europe in end of October. Luckily, I get a chance to attend the Web Summit in Lisbon. This is my third time. For those of you who are not aware of it, it's a huge innovation and tech summit, which has been around for quite a few years, initially coming out of Ireland. And it just draws in a very interesting crowd from entrepreneurs, from investors, cities that are positioning themselves and wanting to attract innovative startups, as well as we have corporates, government officials. So it's an interesting mix, and I'm really, really excited.
So this is an ongoing conference that happens every year?
It's an annual event. Yeah, the last year, 2020, as everything, it took place online. And I'm personally really curious about attending again in person because I guess a lot of us are longing for, face-to-face conversations while enjoying a cup of tea or coffee.
Yeah, I spoke to a group out of Singapore this morning, and I said I can't wait till it gets back to in person because doing it through here, it's a totally different experience. In trying to do that. So last week in Dubai, we had the Dubai Futures Innovation Summit, and it was the most amazing conference. I was the co-host, a co-chair for 2 days, and you sit and listen to all of this amazing technology that people are working on. So how do you break out from that? I mean, everyone is pitching something. How
Yeah.
do I? Yes, walk us through that because I'm thinking. I said, "Oh my God, that's a great idea," and then someone else comes up and says, oh, "That's a great idea too."
Yeah, I think so. The advantage of Dubai Future Accelerators when I was working on is that we had very clear demands, right? We had almost like a filter, or we had then a very specific filter when we looked at the applications because we knew we were looking for something very specific. But similar to what you mentioned now, if the summit last week, Ron, to me, and it was always mind blowing that every new program I discovered something I hadn't known before. I didn't know this was
Yeah.
possible. And I think the interesting thing is that to me personally, it getting to know these different entrepreneurs and teams and the different
Hmm.
tech-based solutions. I know this sounds a bit cheesy, but it also gave me hope that there are certain
Yeah.
issues that we can solve,
Yeah.
and and I also really appreciated the fact that they always, at least most of the entrepreneurs or the majority that I got a chance to work with, they always had a special story about how they came up with this, and that there was really something
Mm.
that was truly motivating them because it was not just making money, which of course is
Yeah.
important. I mean, we all need to pay our bills, but it was way more than that. It's they really wanted to contribute, and I think this was very fascinating. But yeah, it is quite interesting. I mean, I have a friend of mine who's a VC, and it's very difficult once it's public and you're going to a summit like the Web Summit where there's so many startups that you're
Yeah.
constantly getting pitched at. But I think it's also an honor to and exciting to get to meet so many different people. But it can
Yeah.
be a
That
bit tiring. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, because every speaker came up and you said, "Oh my goodness!" So if you think in terms of an investor, which one of those would you invest in? And I felt that a lot of the people in the audience was they were struggling to try it. If I had to force rank 5 presentations, they were all monumental as to what they could do if it all worked out. But if I'm an investor, which one do I invest in? And I think
Mm.
that's kind of the challenge that a lot of organizations are facing. So you're also doing some interesting work around education. Last time we talked, you were doing some work because we think of innovation, we think of tech, we think of all these kinds of things. The end customer is external. What about education? What's happening in that space? What have you seen? Give us some insight.
I mean, they are very interesting ad tech solutions that we have seen, and especially in the last during COVID, because of the whole accelerated digitization that impacted the education sector. With working from home, I think the whole ad tech scene has gotten now more appreciation from investors, but also from the public as such, which I think is very interesting. For me, I'm focusing a lot on programming. So as you mentioned in the beginning, I create different programs, accelerators, workshops, and so on. And
Hmm.
I had a chance to work on a new program. It was a collaboration between my current employer, Ars Electronica, and actually my former university, which we're based in the same city, the Johannes Kepler University. And
Yeah.
it was
How did
called
that how did that feel going back to the old place that you oh my goodness.
I felt like I want to start studying again because a lot of things have changed. It's a beautiful campus that the university has,
Yeah.
but back then there weren't so many extracurricular activities. So now
Yeah.
it's like a totally different scene. So I'm like, now I want to be a student again. So
Yeah.
yeah. But the program I was working on was called Festival University, and it was a kind of, or the goal was to create a new form of academic program, a prototype that potentially could be added to an existing field of studies or study program, or adapt the existing or disrupt it a bit. And it was fantastic. We had a brilliant team working on it. We got 100 students who took part of this 3 weeks program. So the first week was completely online, and then we flew 80 into Linz to Austria for 2 weeks, and the remaining 20 stayed online. And the most interesting part, apart from the students really appreciating seeing another person, a student in person again, because they all had been in online classes, was the fact that they all came from different disciplines. So we had art students, we had psychology students, law students, engineering students, very, very mixed, from 40 different countries.
Wow.
And the interesting part was, so we then had a whole structure, and there were key themes focused on artificial intelligence, sustainability, creative robotics. We had even a dance and performance workshop, so something totally different, and drones and swarm behavior. So it was very diverse. And I think the interesting part was, or the lesson that we took away from it, is this interdisciplinary aspect that is very important, and the conversations that are happening outside the classroom, right? And those are, if you compare it now with innovation, in my perspective, a lot of these innovative ideas don't happen in a set meeting in a boardroom, but when people just grab a coffee or meet at a conference, or casually, the serendipity.
There we go. Yeah. That statement alone is monumental, because I teach a course here in Dubai, American University in Dubai, and working with students and their thought process is totally different than me going to school years ago. And I have hope, because this innovative process and the people that we're exposing to all these kinds of thoughts, you talk about the multiple disciplines that people will bring into the table. You're going to be able to find solutions for a whole lot of things if you unleash that force into the organization.
Absolutely. I mean, I just remember going back to my university years. The university I was studying at is quite big, and has different fields of studies. So I studied business and economics, there's sociology, then there is technical physics, mathematics, and a few other fields, like really, really diverse. Last year they added AI as a field of studies. But during my whole years there, I never worked in a joint project with a student from another field of studies. It was always the business people, the law people, the tech people, right, in silos. And I think what was so interesting, and the key takeaway of this program, is that we need to find this collaborative moments between the students. And this is the same as in the workforce, right? I'm not sure how you feel around, but with all of these, it's really great to be working from home, and we're all very efficient, but these innovative conversations, or these random conversations that can turn into something innovative, you can't schedule them over a Zoom or a Teams meeting. It's just very difficult.
Yes. You kind of opened up a can of worms there for me, because we talked about this before we went live online. I think there has to be a component, whether work from home or work from anywhere. There has to be a physical approach that we get together, even if it's just getting together with nothing planned, just sitting around talking to each other. Because what can come out of a casual conversation can ignite something.
Yeah.
And lots of times we're jaded because we're here. So my schedule is like, I'm on here all day, and I may finish a session at 1 o'clock. And then I've got another call at 3 o'clock. I have another call at 5 o'clock. Then I have another call at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. And you're just trying to get through it. And there's no creativity working there. This is what I find from my side. And what you said is that if we're siloed and we're given the opportunity to bring everyone together and have a conversation, a lot of good things can come about as a result of that. And I think I call it the 3 W's: work from home, workplace, and the work design, all that's going to have to change, and we're going to have to basically start over again. That's just my vision.
I'm just curious because you're working with a lot of HR leaders and experts. What do you see, like, what is their approach now? Because I've been speaking to someone recently who works in the field of HR, and they're looking at a percentage when it comes to what is the percentage of our time we still need to be physically in the office in order to keep these relationships alive between colleagues, and also allows new joiners to feel part that feel that they're part of a community. Like, I'm curious, but like, what are the conversations in the HR community that you have seen?
I think one of the challenges that people have, specifically in our space, is they're looking to see what a Facebook did. They're looking to see what a Microsoft did. You know what? Go to your people, go to your workers, and panel a group of those people, and you design a unique approach. These approaches are going to have to be bespoke, which means that custom design, because these best practices and all this crap, that may not translate here because of something a company did in London. That's not going to translate to what I do, because I could be in a totally different business. But the solution lies in the workers. Now, Microsoft did something that was unique. As soon as they closed down, they put together a listening team, and they started listening to employees. They did pulse surveys, all these kinds of things to get a sense of what the workers were feeling and what would this new model look like in a modern day era post 1 year. And they were able to come up with a solution that the vast majority of employees bought into. There's no 100% buy-in, but the vast majority of people bought in. So I would always advise people, go to your employees and ask them, because those are the ones that your policies are going to impact. And get away from this, what's the best practices that work from home, whatever it is. No. My industry is different. My geographical region is different, and everything is different. So if I custom design an approach with their feedback, I'm going to get as close to that future state of 80% approval rating or whatever it is. That's my vision of it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the other thing I want, go ahead.
Yes. No, I just wanted to comment that I'm also really curious to see how new tech is going to impact the way we work or communicate. I think it's going to be very interesting in the next few years what else comes out of COVID that might have taken 10 to 15 years to develop that now got accelerated. So I think we definitely are in a longer term or in a more intense change that we are undergoing now. It's not just all right, and as soon as we all can go back to the office, we all go back to how it was. I think there's no going back to in that sense. It's the ship has sailed.
Ship has sailed. And I heard a comment on a documentary the other night, and they said never let a crisis go to waste. When I think of that, the 6-day work week to 5-day work week, that was changed in 1921. The org chart was designed in 1921 by Henry Ford, and we've never addressed any of those. So if we had to start over again, and my normal speech when I do these things across the globe is the 3 W's. We have to rethink everything. You got a blank slate and you start from scratch. Technology is driving this. A friend of mine, Stacey Harris, who's the chief research scientist for Sapient Insights, says that there is so much investment in HR tech, people, connecting, project management, new way of communication versus email, or all these other kind of archaic kind of solutions. There's so much innovation coming on, and which is what you're sitting at the forefront. And this is what I saw last week at the Innovation Summit, that we will not understand what the workplace looks like in 5 years. In 10 years, it's going to be completely flipped.
Absolutely,
as it relates to that,
And I think this takes what I think it takes a lot from business leaders, but also government leaders, is the kind of like prepare everyone that, hey, there is going to be a change, and we don't know what's going to be the outcome. And because that's so we run various workshops on, for example, artificial intelligence. And the goal of these workshops are not to become an expert in it, but we refer to it as, let me find a proper English translation for the German term, but refer to it as a competence to place it, so okay, this is AI. I understand what it is, what it can do, what it could do in the future, but what it can't do. And the first thing we always asked the participants, what do you associate with the term AI when you hear it? And there's always this, of course, robots come up, autonomous driven cars, but then there's always this polarized answers as, well, we see it as an opportunity for growth, for change, for improvement. And I'm really, really afraid of what's coming up. And I'm really afraid of what I've seen in movies, and I'm really afraid about my job. And I think the biggest lie would to tell people that, oh, don't worry, you're not affected by it, because that's just like, we don't know yet. I always think of any emerging tech solution like a stone you throw into the water, and you have the different waves, but we don't know what those waves are. So last week I had a very interesting conversation, or 2 weeks ago, with my colleague as we're preparing for a new program, and we talked about electric cars and also autonomous driven cars. I mean, you can't just say, let's say, while I am a teacher, how should I be affected by electric or autonomous driven cars? Because when you look at it, at least when I was growing up, we had education in like traffic education. How do you, if you cross the pedestrian street, so on, like you go left, strip, you look left and right and left and before you cross, right? And you look for the driver and see if he nods or waves his hand, or if he really stops, right? You always look for this human contact. But when it comes to, for example, autonomous driven cars, you don't have, there is no driver, you don't have this human contact, right? And my colleagues were working on an interesting project, and there are many out there, on how could this communication between the pedestrian and the car, so this human to machine communication, looks like. And one project is, for example, that the car, when it stops, in order to indicate to the person that it's safe to cross the street, is to basically to display a pedestrian cross, or like check, so that like communicating with this. And this will then impact how we educate our children when it comes to the traffic, right? And there's so many other areas. I mean, just thinking of how will the gas stations of the future look like if most cars will be electric, and charging takes a bit more time than filling up your gas. It's just very interesting, and I think that's, I'm not sure what you say to this, but I feel as this comfort with the unknown is something that we I guess have to live with for the next few years.
Next few years, multiple years. I looked at the Tesla ordered, Hertz ordered 100,000 cars of Teslas. Stock shot up, and all this. This man is $300 billion richer as a result of that. This is the future, and I don't think anyone should be afraid of it. There's going to be a place for everyone. Should we be reskilled? Yes. So I worked for the past 6 days with HR people. How you're going to interpret this, how you're going to be able to understand and diagnose your workplace, and what is your role in playing through this whole case of innovation. It's a totally new ball game. And I think we all should be grateful that we're experiencing what our forefathers experienced during the Industrial Revolution. So it's kind of looked at as Industrial Revolution 4.0. And it's a tremendous opportunity. And if you approach it from a negative connotation, you're going to find facts or made up facts to tie into that. But it is a tremendous opportunity for all of us to kind of, let's move on and see what I have to do to play a part in that.
Yeah. I mean, to add to this, I do understand if when people feel that this uncertainty causes them some negative feelings, right? Because it's taking us out of the comfort zone. But I think there are two factors, how I personally see it, why these negative feelings come up. One is simply, well, we don't know what's going to happen, but it's also this fear of failure, right? Because as you just said right now, the example of the new work model for the future, it hasn't been developed yet. Every organization, industry has to develop it. So we need a playground, a safe playground where somebody who is a leader or a team has the permission from the management to try out and test different things. Not the focus on it needs to succeed on the first attempt, because this is not innovation, right? Like we have to really bring in this innovative mindset to the organizations, and that means while I try something, it might fail, I might learn something from it, or it might succeed, but the chance that it's going to be successful the first attempt is very slim, right? And I think this we have to, or at least, and this is also like for me, relearn or just or take off this fear of failing and say, well, I tried it, I learned something. Let me continue. And it's very easy to say this, right? But that's what I appreciated so much about the thought of the BioFuture Foundation's the BioFuture Accelerator program, using this city as a test bed. So not using the city as implementing it right away, or like getting it 100% right the first time. No, it's a test bed, because you need to develop it further, right? I mean, otherwise it would be boring if you just apply it as it is. That's kind of like the stagnation and not innovation. Yeah.
So it kind of falls back into this whole concept around change management, because change management entails preparing the audience for a change. And I think that government as well as organizations are going to have to begin having this conversation to tamp down that fear. So when you think about AI and robotics and all those things, it's not really a bad thing. It's just the next iteration of what's going to come. So how do we prepare for it? How do we begin it from high schools and colleges and all those things?
Yeah, I agree. And in the end, I mean, the way I see it is any technology is a tool, right? Just because we have this technology does not mean we're going to have a better future. And I want to give an example here. I had a chance to work with a fantastic company out of UK. They're called Vino, and they are focused on food waste management. So it's a very simple concept, but it's very efficient. They have, so if you imagine a large kitchen of a hotel, of a cruise ship, of a huge restaurant, they would have a garbage bin, where they throw away the leftover food, right? Which is a lot, which is very shameful that it's so much. And they put a scale under this garbage bin, and they put a camera, a computer vision, so AI camera, that detects what kind of food has been thrown away. And then there's a display, and it shows immediately, well, how many grams did I throw away, and what's the monetary value? So how many dollars did I throw in the bin? And if I do this on a day-to-day basis, what would be the monetary value?
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is that this tech-based solution did not solve the problem on its own, but it's because the chef, the team, the purchase management now had the information that we are throwing away 0.5 kilos of tomatoes every single day. Well, then let's buy less tomatoes, and let's reduce the portion size of the tomato salad, for example. And that's, I think, the interesting part is that because of this information that this tech solution provided them, they could make better informed decision that had a positive impact, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the takeaway. And I mean, I always say to any company I work with is AI or any other tech-based solution, it's like a tool. And when it comes to emerging tech, we are at the very early stage. So I remember when, I don't know how it was when you were growing up, Ron, but when I was growing up, it was not mandatory, or it was only mandatory when you were driving to fasten the seatbelt if you're the driver or the passenger, but not in the row behind. And now looking at it, it's like, how, like, this doesn't make any sense, right? But we had to learn, unfortunately, through accidents, that how to use the car. I mean, I remember my grandfather, yeah, he had a very weird car anyway. It's a very old one, but it was a different time. But the same is with AI, for example, or blockchain solutions. We are still in the child stage, right? Like
Yes,
you would,
yes.
I mean, I don't think, Ron, you would give a 3-year-old a hammer and say, "Off you go, good luck." But we were educated and we learned that a hammer can put a nail in a wall and you can put up a nice picture, but I can
Hmm.
also injure someone or,
Yeah,
you know,
knock them side your
break
head. Yeah,
something. Yeah. And
yeah.
we just are learning how to, as a society, as government, as lawmakers, how to
Mm,
use these solutions. Yeah. At
yeah.
least that's my take on it.
Well, you mentioned the seatbelts because when seatbelts first came out, my father was so aggravated, and my father owned a taxi business. In his personal car, he took his knife and he took a knife and cut the seatbelt because at that time when you got in the car, the seatbelt automatically came over and connected. He said, "I don't want anybody telling me what to do," and he literally took his knife and he cut it. And my mother gave him so much chances. Why are you so stupid? This is to help you to be safe. And eventually he says, "You know what?" He went back to the dealer and said, "You need to put in some new ones here because my wife is on my back." And and the cost of it almost, it was an enormous amount at that time. But that was a lesson to learn because he did not want to move forward. He wanted to have the freedom to just drive and not have anything, even though that they had already shown what the safety angle was.
Hmm.
You
But
know,
that's the thing, right? We didn't know better, right? And that's why this question of how can we do it better, I think, is so important. And
yeah,
I mean, I guess your dad thought, well, it has worked for me for so many years. Why
yeah,
change now?
yeah,
Which is a very common response to if some change is approaching. I think that's a very human reaction, but yeah,
yeah, yeah. It
it's not the
happens.
best question. Yeah.
Yeah, it happens. So you've worked on so many innovative technological approaches. What have you seen over a period of time, without really getting into details of naming the company, that was really unique to you? Because I sat in that conference and everything was, oh my God, that's great. And then the other one comes up, oh my God, that's great too. What what have you seen over your period of time working in innovation that really intrigued you? And if you force rank that, that would be a number one and number two.
Oh, wow. That's a really difficult challenge question because I had the pleasure of working with so many different startups and scale-ups at the Biofuture Accelerators, and now at Ars Electronica, I get to work with different artists on other projects. I think what always amazed me is just things I couldn't even envision. So I remember the
Mm.
first time I heard about water harvesting. So turning air into drinking water, which I think is
Oh yeah, I
that's
saw
that's
that.
like
Yeah, yeah.
that's like alchemy, right? Um, Another interesting project was different solutions in mobility. Hyperloop, for example, it's still gonna be a few years, but I mean, this is gonna revolutionize the way we travel. Um, Anything related to personalized medicine. I think that's a very interesting field. Not treating every patient the same way, but how do we personalize medicine? How do we also use tech to take off work from the doctors and nurses and hospital staff so that they can focus more on the patients? Take off the admin stuff
Hmm.
and uh, anything very interested related to education. I came across a company, or got a chance to meet a company from the UK who focuses on the security aspect of kids online,
Okay.
which I think is a very, very important
Yeah,
topic, especially now during COVID and homeschooling. But Ron, to rank them, and I'm pretty sure if you
I
ask
know.
me
I
again
know.
next way,
Yeah,
I'm gonna think of
it would
others.
be something else. Yeah, right.
It
So,
was just mind blowing overall. I think what is possible and what people are working on and what they did kind of dreamed up as something that they had in mind, but now they're actually turning it into reality. I think it was just an honor to get exposed to all of them, really. Yeah.
okay. Can you see the comments? I see a comment here from Gilray's College. A question with what would be
Yeah.
some? Yeah. Testbed. That's above my pay grade.
I'm just seeing it now. I see, and I actually know Gunreis. He was a participant of the Biofuture Accelerators, and it's his
Okay.
birthday today. So happy birthday, Gunreis!
Hey, happy birthday, Gores.
So the Testbed program is, of course, at the Biofuture Accelerators, but it's and there are different others around the world that a lot of the times they have to do more with regulations. So once the solution is already developed and ready for the market, looking into regulations. And a very, very interesting one is, for example, autonomous cars, right? Right now, they're kind of like still operating in a safe zone, but we have to get them on the street sooner or later. But I think the interesting part that Dubai took is just not waiting for the solution to be ready and then looking how we can implement it, but exposing government organizations already to solutions that are kind of like maybe half-baked is not the right word, but that are in development to then co-develop it, to co-test it. And I think that's, but there are quite a few happening around the world when it comes to the regulative aspect, which unfortunately is simply because of the nature of legislations and regulations is just very slow.
The
it
thicket.
Always takes it takes some time, but it's definitely important.
So I learned a new word or phrase, testbed programs. I have no idea what that is, but now I understand what that is. So that's the cool thing about doing this show. So as we begin the process of closing out, what would be for entrepreneurs who are working in the garage concept, the garage from the US, or working in an apartment trying to put something together, what would be a couple of things, key advice that you would give to them before they get to the pitching kind of approach? Because maybe they're too much head down and not looking at the overall big picture. Is there any advice you would give these people?
I mean, I had a chance to listen to several pitches. And again, I'm not an investor because investors look at it differently. But I think one point that always stood out to me is somebody knew his audience. And with audience, I mean two group of people. One, who is the pitch meant for? So is it invested? Is it an incubator? Is it an accelerator? Is it a potential partner they can co-develop? It's a joint venture partner? Or is it somebody who wants to buy, so potential client, right? Like you always need to target your message. And then very important is keep in mind as well that those might not be tech experts, or they might not be experts from your field, right? So you need to explain it in a way that makes sense and doesn't require this technical expertise to understand the potential impact. And the second one is what we were talking about in the beginning. What I always appreciated is somebody did not just only mention the return on investment from a monetary perspectives, but also, well, what does it mean for the individual, for the employee, for the customers, for the stakeholders, this human-centered approach, right? Because I think that's very important. So what does it mean to us human, or as people? But knowing your audience, and again, trying to speak their language and focusing on, well, this is how much you can save, this is how much faster you can produce, but what does it mean, right? Okay, what is then the impact so that we can also relate to it?
So that dynamic has changed. I had the discussion in my session this morning. At one time it was stakeholders, customers, and employees were last. Now it's flipped and say, employees, if employees are taken care of, customers are taken care of, which means shareholders are taken care of. And I learned that lesson from American Hospital here in Dubai. The former CEO, Peter Makowski, who's now a good friend of mine, and I read a statement that he made when he had first came on board, that he doesn't worry about the patient satisfaction scores. He said, if we take care of the employees will take care of the customers. We don't need to worry about satisfaction scores because it's a cascade and it all works from there.
That's brilliant. And an innovative approach.
Innovative approach. Karin, thank you. Thank you so much for making time for us. I came across the gift you gave me when you left. We had lunch that day.
I remember.
That bag. I won't tell the story behind the bag because maybe people will get a different impression of me. But Anyway, I came across the other day and it was great. So thank you so much. And just hang on for a minute as we begin the process of closing out. And
Thank you so much
Holly,
for having me.
Holly, for
Yeah.
1 second, I want to recognize Dana Thompson, who said this is a very good discussion. So thank you, Dana, for listening in. Thank you. Okay,
Thank you.
we can
Thank you for
close
having
it
me,
out.
Ron.
Okay,
Thanks.
just hang on for a sec.